can see you, and I know what you do. So put your hands on your face and cover up your eyes. Don't look until I signal. Peekaboo! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Peekaboo! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Peekaboo! The way that we want is what will become. So please pay attention while I show you some of what's about to happen. Peekaboo! I know what you do, 'cause I do it too. So put your hands on your face and cover up your eyes. Don't look until I signal. Peekaboo! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Peekaboo! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Peekaboo! Laugh if you want to, or say you don't care. If you cannot see it, you think it's not there. It doesn't work that way. Peekaboo! I can see you, and I know what you do. So put your hands on your face and cover up your eyes. Don't look until I signal. Peekaboo! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Peekaboo! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Peekaboo! The way that we want is what will become. So please pay attention while I show you some of what's about to happen. Peekaboo! 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 I can see you, and I know what you do. So put your hands on your face and cover up your eyes. Don't look until I signal. Peekaboo! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Peekaboo! Ha 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 ha! Ha 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 ha! Peekaboo! The way that we want is what will become.
And I'm here tonight with the Jungle Brothers, and we're about to get in this thing called Black is Black is Black is Black. Yeah. Oh, baby. Yeah. Black is Black is Black is Black. In America today, I have to regret to say something is not right, and it deals with black and white. Tell me, Mike, is it me? Nah, this is society filled with propaganda, huh? Why do we meander, in a zone with hate for peace, or of this BS mischief? All I am is one black man in a mighty big right hand. Brother, sister, sister, if you miss or if you mister, listen please to this fact. Black is black is black is black.
See you black, brown, red, or yellow?
Black is black is black is black.
Yeah.
Woo!
Bobby Mosley. Oh, yeah.
I said, black is black is black is black. Way back when in 68, brothers didn't have it great. They fought back the civil rights. God is soul, it took its sight. The common foe you plainly see. All the streets are on TV. Segregation was the king. Vietnam was full of
magical glue that helps me break a dizzy world for kissing straight. This time I'm not feeling so. This time I'm not feeling so. This time I'm not feeling so great. Give it a rush, it's going through my head. For what I face, seems something I did. Give it a rush, going through my mind. Didn't move.
Ray, welcome back to Bored to Death. It's
Thank
been
you.
not very long at all, but I couldn't wait to have you back.
Thanks for having us.
Did you have so much fun last time? You were like, yeah, I'm
We
coming
just
back.
can't stop talking about the good old days. Yeah, and skateboarding.
Yeah, no, it was great. It was one of
Thank
my
you.
personal favourites, that episode. So,
Well, you
very
had
much.
Jamie Blair here, 50 years of
Yeah.
skateboard. Yeah.
Yep. James
History.
Legend.
And Rick, thank you very much for making the journey all the way down.
No worries. It's good.
Great to
Okay.
have you on, and great to have someone from Dundee.
Cool. No, it's
Finally.
good. Good. Yeah.
We'll do the usual.
Sure.
Everyone wants to know how you got your first skateboard, if you can remember.
Sure. Yep. I remember first skateboard. Kind of got my first board in pieces, and that basically a bunch of us used to do BMX and went down to ride some ramps in a place called Broughty Ferry near Dundee.
Yep, been
And
there.
Nick, who was skating on the screen a minute ago, he's a BMXer but also had a skateboard, and I ended up going up to his house and he gave me a set of trucks. I watched that video, Future Primitive, first ever skate video I watched, and immediately I was like, right, I want a skateboard. So I got those trucks and then proceeded to nail them, screw them to a piece of wood for a couple of weeks, and then eventually my mum bought me I had a Powell Peralta Rabones deck. It was my first ever board with Veriflex wheels. That was my first setup. So I was fortunate. I had a pretty good setup from the get-go. I didn't have a cheap
Yeah,
cheap board.
no in between.
I was fortunate. So it's 40 quid for a Powell Peralta Rabones deck from Richie's Cycles in Broughty Ferry.
Does it still exist, that shop?
The shop doesn't long
Nah.
gone, yeah. But
Classic graphic too. I was wanting the
yeah,
Ratbone.
I had a reissue for a little while and I sold it to someone, but I'm kind of hankering to get another one because it's Ratbone's just
Regret.
great deck.
Yeah.
I rode that thing for a long time. The tail was about this long by the time.
That's something you don't see these days as much as people used to do bonelesses a lot, so the tail would wear down on one side.
Also, it's the first
And
board I
it's-
started ollieing on though, so the tail did wear from ollies.
Yeah. But people with skateboards down to maybe they're expensive, maybe they weren't easy to get. But these
Yeah.
days, people are like the pop is more important
Yeah,
because
yeah.
of the tricks. Whereas back then, I feel like the tail would wear out.
The
and
tail
then
bone, well, when I first got it, it had full works, had the full nose bone around the front, the tailbone on the tail, and then rails on there. But then you got to the point eventually you're like, it's kind of uncool. I don't really want to ride those anymore. So you took the nose
Yeah.
bone and the tailbone off, and actually the rails. Even lots of people ride rails now, but they didn't for a long time. But as the
what do
tail
you call
would wear
that? We
down,
call that skateboard furniture. Like
Skateboard
door furniture.
furniture,
It's
yeah,
kind of like
yeah.
unnecessary.
well, a lot of people
additional-
ride rails now. People are quite into having rails now. It's kind of popular again. But yeah, because it took the tailbone off, the tail would wear, and then basically it'd be wedged, but then you'd basically just saw it off and round it again, and then it would wear down again. You'd saw off. That's why the tail ended up really short because you just kept cutting bits off. I rode that for about a year and a half. So.
And what year was this? Did you get your first skateboard?
It's like 1985, I think that was the year I got the first board.
1985.
Yeah.
I think that was the
so.
same
was
year as
trying-
the
Yeah.
Future Primitive.
Future Primitive is 85. Yeah, because I got my
Yeah.
board in 87. So you were there.
Yeah.
Before, I mean, I had a skateboard before that. The story, the
Yeah.
wooden polyprop, but
No,
it's not polyprop, the old board.
Yeah.
But I think the Pacer Maniac came out in '87.
Maniac. Yeah.
I mean, I went unfortunately to a mid-level skateboard first, but I'm just enjoying this footage. There's a bank to curb in there that was a classic in the factory. Bank to curb, a nice little cast concrete, slappy.
So
So
Glasgow connection in this video, which I don't think it's there at this point in this footage.
there's a
Where's that
concrete
coping?
wall.
There's
a concrete
coping,
curb.
the big vert ramp that used to be in the indoor Angel Lights skate park,
Yeah.
church skate park
Been
here.
talked about very much.
That was originally a 32 feet wide vert ramp, but they could only fit 20 feet of it into the building. So there was another 12 feet of ramp, which actually ended up coming to Dundee in there. And
That's
it was
is that
a-
crazy.
no,
that the
the,
big-
the ramp parts never got used, but if you remember the coping, it was this really chunky coping. Like it's
Yeah.
literally like 5-inch diameter.
You
or
had the
something
acid
like that.
drop off it.
And we had two sections of that 12 feet long, and that got concreted into the floors like a double
That
grind
was
rail.
that was the
That was the grind rail. That's the coping. That was the coping.
Angel
that we-
Lights.
Angel Lights coping. Yeah.
Now, what year would you call Angel Lights? Like, what year was that we were just watching? That's 89.
I think from
88.
This is what I love
88,
about this
8
because Jamie Blair was here last week and he was
Yeah.
giving us the start of this story
Yeah,
about
yeah.
that being halved.
Yeah.
So I think it was 1990. But that conversation just
the
flew
comp-
on
there was a
so
comp-
great
the-
from last week.
The comp was an AES comp in Kelvin Hall, which was I think was in 88, I think. 88, 89 is when that comp was.
The Kelvin Hall.
I'm pretty sure that's
I'm
the year
saying
it
it's
was. 88. I think I read something just yesterday.
Yeah, it's 88 because my knees, I busted my, I'm on crutches at that comp. I made it through and that was around about 15, young 15.
Yeah.
I did my knee in.
Yeah.
I was going to say if you're wrong, someone's going to tell you in the YouTube
It's
comments.
88, 89.
I'm pretty sure.
someone
I
will
think
tell us
I
on
only
the
It's
remember.
88. I'm going to say it's 88.
I only remember
Oh,
because
God.
I read something. There was something I was looking at yesterday when I was looking at some old stuff. I'm pretty sure I saw that. And
88?
88, yeah.
Yeah, Kelvin Hall, 88.
Kelvin
but
Hall.
then when it gets rehoused in
Angel Lights.
Annie's Land in the church, that's going to be 89.
It's going to be 89, I think. Probably took a
Yeah.
little while. But I'm guessing it was in storage for a while.
And we're talking about Jamie Blair's part here, but
Yeah.
but that ramp, it's funny because we've seen the coping ends up in Dundee
Yep.
in that kind of skateboard, appropriation or waste, not a good bit of coping.
Yep.
Well, let's just get into
yeah.
it. Let's
Yeah.
just get into the topic. Did I say this?
Yeah.
Dundee.
Dundee.
We're representing Dundee this week on the podcast. So, specifically in Dundee, we're going to talk about a term, the factory.
Factory, yeah.
And this has, what would you say, a couple of different variations.
It's 4 technically. There's
You've
the two original.
Definitive DIY
Yeah,
spots.
definitive DIY ones would be the
Only
referred to
skate park
the
in
first
Scotland.
factory and second factory. And they
Only
were
skate park.
Sorry,
in
that's
Scotland.
a lie. Not technically indoor skate
Oh,
park.
indoor, okay.
yeah,
But I mean, the Angel Lights ramp at Annie's Land comes along, but it's kind of a street. You look at the size of it. You're looking at it. It's a street
yeah.
set up. It's an Animal Chin inspired mini ramp kind of. I mean, yeah, you do have the Angel
Yeah, I mean,
Lights
Angel
ramp.
Light's not long after this because
So let's go back
yeah,
to
yeah.
the start. How did it start? I take it, I could be wrong by the way, totally wrong. The name, the factory, as it just used to be a factory.
just basically some kind of factory building. Yeah,
I mean, it was abandoned.
Yeah, well, basically kind of wee origin stories. What I mentioned before about did BMX and met Nick and got my skateboard. And there were some ramps in a place called Broughty Ferry. It's just outside Dundee. And there's a BMXer called Scott Carroll, who's a basically world champion BMXer. So he had built, it was basically an 8 foot wide, roughly not even 8 foot high, sort of vert ramp, but pretty small.
Yeah.
Built that, and then we ended up building a small mini ramp. So we used to skate there and ride bikes. But then there was a group of guys, younger guys like Smod, who we've
Davey
talked about.
Smith.
Davey Smith, who's doing the front side T-shirt and stuff, some of that as well.
And that one?
It's the T-shirt of Craig McKnight, which we did. Smod and I did, but so the Smod, I mean, my kind of. So Craig McKnight, who's sort of a kind of a father figure.
Yeah,
he was
yeah.
he's older than everyone, so he really managed to pull everyone together. He told me the story about coming up from London, where he had trained as a professional dancer and got into skateboarding again.
Wow.
Because he remembers skating Kelvin Grove. Jamie Blair's sort of similar, maybe a little bit younger than Jamie Blair, but he came up to Dundee, professional dancer with a skateboard, and discovers these guys hanging out in the factory.
Basically,
but there wasn't it wasn't that well organized. It was a makeshift, and he was a real galvanizing kind of force of nature. So he kind of whips it in and can deal with like the local constabulary. He can talk to policemen and go, "Look, we're tidying the space up."
Yeah.
Then I guess, and then I should hand over to Rick, but you've got the Broughty Ferry ramp. So these guys can build ramps, like
basically,
good ramps.
I mean, basically on one of the guys that's skating there's Nick Johnson, one of the guys there. He's Nick is a joiner to this day. He's a really good joiner, but he was really good at building stuff. Would take a lot of time. Craig was great because he just had tons of energy, tons of motivation. He would just get on and do things, but wouldn't necessarily be built the best. So the first ramp that was built in there was a 16 foot wide mini ramp. But I think they'd literally drawn the transitions by hand. So I think they were definitely not the best radius on there. So I think when we went along and met them, and then we basically moved it to a different part of the building. I think we must have recut the transitions, and then we We acquired lots of wood, shall we say? Lots of wood.
There was a appropriation culture going on.
Yeah, we did get given money from places, and actually the version here, the surface on that ramp was actually paid for by Deathbox skateboards, who now flip skateboards. But previously they were called Deathbox and were based in the UK, and they actually, a lot of the Deathbox riders used to come.
So that's where I'm saying this is. It's one of the indoor parks in the UK and definitely in Scotland at a time when there weren't many ramps, and it was basically a DIY space, which was a bunch of different people involved. So we just sort of said the origin stories, and then, but we're coming down from Aberdeen. There was a place called the Exhibition Centre with a vert ramp, but this was a mini ramp complex. There was a ramp inspired by Animal Chin
from the footage
with a spine, a rollover, extension, a hip. I mean, down the original end, when I first went there, the ramp you're describing didn't have the hip, but there was this incredible jam there when the Clan guys came up. We talked about this with Jamie, and the styles were just like, it was just this style of riding. Lee Ralph was there. There's a kind of a strong Glasgow identity. It was a different carve-based. We were talking about Davy Phillips earlier, and you also had like Rocker and people who are up from England. So it got coverage. It got right up in the magazines. In fact,
I think in the article,
is it that one?
I can't remember if it's in that one. In one of the magazines, and there it does get into the nitty gritty of there being a bit of a
style. There were two conflict. There was a kind of a carve-based style, and
like a
clash
of cultures, almost of trick-based type stuff versus just carving and
the Clan guys are there, doing Smiths and laybacks and just carving up with Lee Ralph, just doing unreal stuff. But the legacy of that is, one, there's a sort of Scottish, I'm going to say a Scottish kind of style or identity, but you've also got, by the time it moves up here, you've got one of the only, the Deathbox coming up. Mike Manzuri came up. That there was a comment. Everyone from all over the UK came to a Abandon factory in Dundee, and it got coverage in local, not local, in the national kind of skateboarding
and I
magazines.
take it within the Scottish scene. I don't want to be offensive when I say back then, but back then, if this was now, it would just be Instagram, like someone taking a picture, it goes out like wildfire. I take it back then, it is just word of mouth. Like, you need to go up to Dundee, you need to see this place.
Pretty much.
See this
is
factory.
that you, Rick?
Yeah, that's me there.
Yeah, I know by the I didn't know by the hat. I knew by the tricks.
That's me.
Yeah, Rick Curran. So the Dundee, I'm going to go Dundee, the DHSS, Dundee Hardcore Skate Squad, which was Rick and Nick, Scott Malcolm, Aaron, and Hawaiian Daryl Smith, who designed Dudhope Skate Park, the concrete park there. So, but I'm going to go back to Livy just for a brief moment. Before the factory, there was Livy, and we met these guys because if you skated in Scotland, you basically had to.
You went to Livy.
You went to Livy. That's the only skate park. Before there was an indoor park like this, or Angel Lights at Annie's Land. So we, there's only one train. I actually met Scott Carroll because we'd come down from Aberdeen, and there's a BMXer sitting on the first train to Edinburgh in the morning. So it's ridiculous. We get on the train at 6, you end up in Edinburgh at 9:30, 10. Then you have to hang around and get another hour out to Livy. Get to Livy about midday, 12 or 1 o'clock. Big journey to make. And we're only like 14, 15, I don't know. Anyway, when we meet Mr. Rick Curran and the DHSS, who are making their own stickers. And I remember the first time I met you, we were talking about the stickers that were, and anyway, the exhibition ramp up in Aberdeen came after that. But there's, we made a contact with the Dundee guys. You'd come up to skate the exhibition, the exit, and then we would come down and skate the factory. That's kind of just, we met at Livy before that. Then this happens, and you turn up in this space, and it's got like, the Animal Chin ramp
stuff,
and before you know it, within months, there's that skate jam when all the guys are up from England, and you got that Clan, this kind of like amazing kind of almost culture, kind of different styles of skateboarding going down. But then move forward a year later, and it's come up here, and there's a whole street spot. There's a fun box that's new. There's a bank to curb that I was picking up on. It's just so there's a street comp and there's a mini ramp comp, and then Rocker, who's phenomenal, and gets a sort of full page Deathbox advert, and he's going over the hip in Dundee. And so all of a sudden, this scene that's been self-built and started with some kids occupying a factory.
And I think a lot of that just came out. I mean, although it's like that in Scotland, but I think UK as a whole like that. I mean, there wasn't a ton of skate parks across the UK, so people were prepared to travel a lot more. And I used to travel down to England, go down to Manchester and other places to skate because there were, you knew where the skate parks were. I mean, there'd be things in magazines, sometimes they'd list where
Look
parks
at the
were.
coping. Sorry, you can see it. That
That's
massive
right,
thick coping.
That's the coping there. That's what would have been part of the Angel Lights vert ramp. It's just peeking in the shot there. But yeah, I mean, people would travel. That's again with Livy being the only place. I mean, people travelled all over from Scotland to go there and skate, and would come from the rest of the UK too, because it was basically one of the best skate parks in the UK.
I mean, it must have been so cool to walk in there for the first time, not seen it, and been like, wow, because there would have been nothing else like it in Scotland.
I mean, I guess from my side, it's like I said, help build it, so we kind of saw it kind of happen that way. But yeah, I mean, we still knew it was amazing. I mean, because quite often a common thing at the weekends is that we would, I mean, the whole place had lights fitted because one of the guys, Colin Payton, just climbed up and there was lighting there, but it had no wiring, so he basically wired it all up. And then at the weekend, we would chip in and would rent a generator, and then we would run for power. And we'd basically skate into the early hours, or almost.
I mean, how
overnight,
resourceful is
almost
that?
every weekend.
100%.
That was our thing. So it was basically this, spot that you could basically skate at nighttime, and we would just have massive sessions there.
Did you charge people for coming in?
We would do it kind of at the weekend. I've actually got a little picture from one of the magazines. There's actually a little Scotland thing I found, and it shows a thing about the factory, and it says free, but the weekends apparently we charge 30p. But I know
It was popular.
But if
the thing
somebody
is,
didn't have money, we wouldn't not let them in. People would come in.
It'd be nice if you could help.
Yeah, no,
that was kind of it. It was like
People swept
chip
up.
in if you can, and
People swept up. They organised. They built stuff. They put in a bit of graft. There was like a.
That's the only way something like this can work, especially now.
Colin Payton was actually the thing. If somebody didn't have money, he'd give him a brush and tell him to go and sweep some of the park.
Dundee.
That's what he would do.
Like proper Dundee.
He'd just tell, go and do a wee job then and stuff. And so a lot of the younger kids could do that. But I mean, if somebody didn't have money, they would skate it anyway. But one of the things we'd get money for sometimes is that not so much where the ramp is there in these images, but it was actually at a different part of the building originally.
Is that after the fire? This footage is after the fire.
Yeah, that's after the fire. This is really near the end. This is
John Rattery too.
That's John Rattery again, yeah. But
what age is John there? He looks young.
He's super young.
11.
Wow.
Yeah, maybe.
So I think he's came down from Aberdeen to skate at this point.
Yeah, I mean, he's already... So the connection between Aberdeen... I'm sure Scotland's not big, but I felt like there was a strong... Actually, Dundee's in the centre of Scotland in many ways, so like that's where we can all meet there. But the next one I almost feel like was even more like a kind of a weekend spot from all over Scotland. For some reason, this felt like there's a strong connection between Dundee and Aberdeen. Yeah. I don't know why. Just maybe it's a bias.
If we back that up, just to what you said, there was a fire.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, basically, cutting the sort of giving a wee bit of history. I mean, this factory in total lasted for about 3 years. I think it's probably from the first version, so it's sort of 88 through to into 91. I think that's rough timeline. I have to double check. It's something like that. But basically, these images you can see there. This is the back of the spine ramp, and there's a wee bit there that's just all burnt out. And basically near the end, we were. If we'd been told at this point, we were very close to being told by the council that we had to clear out the building because they were planning on knocking it down.
Right.
At one point, they were potentially going to build a big road through this area, which they never did. But they did there you go, back to we were
talking about that.
But before, I'm not sure if they told us that there was a bit of trouble where sometimes people hanging out had caused a bit of problems with the neighbours, and somebody came and part of it burnt here. And then we repaired it. And then not long after that, I think we got told to move out. And then somebody came again and like torched it big time. Like it got burnt. Like
Jesus.
there's nothing salvageable from it. And it was kind of crazy because every time we'd resurface the ramp, we would just put a new layer of ply on top. So this thing was
Chunky.
like this thick. So for this to burn, somebody put quite a lot of petrol on it.
Yeah.
We never did really figure out who did it. So yeah, pretty much everything you see there just got lost in the end. You know, so we're pretty used to. Unfortunately, sets a pattern, but we're pretty used to stuff building things, use it, and then losing it.
Have to be. So at this point, it's the end of Factory 1. It's, what did you say, Rick, 1990, 91?
It's 90, yeah, it's pushing, might even
1991, because
it's close to 91. It's pretty close.
Perth Road's happening, like, where I'm coming down before I go to art school. I go to art school in 92. So it's definitely 91, if not early 90s.
I think,
late
yeah,
90s,
it's maybe not
early
as far as
90s.
91, because there was definitely a wee bit of a gap between this and the next one, because there was a bit of a
during that gap,
horrible time where there was nothing to skate.
I was just
and
about
it's
to
kinda
say, I take it
depressing.
there's nothing to skate indoors now.
Not really. I think nothing in Dundee. Definitely nothing in Dundee. And I can't remember timeline wise. I know there was an
Davy
indoor.
Smith. Sorry,
Oh, yeah?
nice.
yeah.
Like below the kind of stalefish
Nice.
carve.
That's cool. But I know there was an indoor, 16-foot wide indoor mini ramp in St Andrews. I don't know if you ever
Oh
skated
yeah,
that one. In
what was that
Cosmo-
called? The Cosmo. That was an
Center.
amazing mini ramp.
Don't know if that was during that. I have a feeling that might have been within that gap, because I remember there being nothing else to skate apart from that ramp.
We used to come
whenever
through and
that
go
was.
skate that with
And
you
that's like
guys.
amazing sessions in there. It was just this little, really tight transition.
Oh, and the
16
noise in there.
Oh,
Martin
it's incredible.
Bernard Mental doing all the tails and that with Raffy down, pair of them just hitting the coping as
Such a
hard
good,
as you can.
And it was only open like 2 nights a week, so it was like you were fired up to skate. By the time you got in there, you were like, right, okay. The sessions were amazing. So
Davey Smith again, 1 foot carve. Look at the style coming in for this guy.
But I think
But
I
when
might be wrong on
was
that
the ball
timeline.
built? Was the ball built before or the
Newport-
same time?
Newport Ball's a wee bit later than that, I think.
Later
I'm
than
bad. I
Perth
do have a
Road.
timeline somewhere. I've got dates on there. I
I
can't
kind of
remember
feel
exactly.
like it's.
I'm always a bit vague.
Andy Dobson was in Newport then.
It's a bit later. It's a bit
feel
after that.
No, because he wasn't staying there when we got to get a story straight.
Yeah.
The Perth Road, I feel like Andy had already stayed with Craig, so maybe the ball happens. Craig McKnight.
I mean, the ball exists at the same time as the second factories going.
Does it?
They are, yeah. They're both together because the ball was there too. So
How did Factory 2 come about?
Factory 2 again. Probably, I think one of the guys, Colin Payton, who's the guy who sort of wired up all the lights and stuff in the first place. He just went. I think because we'd lost the building, they went looking to try and find a building.
To
So they were just
confirm,
hunting
Factory
around.
2 is a totally different location.
Totally different
Perth
location.
Road, where
It's now where
DCA is, the
yeah.
Dundee Contemporary Arts. So 10 years before there's an art centre there's a flourishing subculture. You know, it's like this activity moves to the Perth Road, and there's 3 floors there. It's an old garage with a loading bay ramp, but there's a big mini ramp on the first floor. Top floor was like it kind of moved into upstairs. It had one of the best hips ever.
Yeah.
It was a beautiful
The
setup
top
upstairs.
floor was kind of wide. There was like the second sort of middle floor was a relatively pretty low roof, so you couldn't really build anything very big in there. But there was a few wee things. But
There was a big
downstairs there was a
mini
16-foot wide mini with an 8-foot spine that kind of went through a
hole in the wall.
in the wall. So you kind
So
of
you
went
go to another room.
It's kind of dark in there
That's
too.
kinda cool
So you
sounding.
disappeared through the
That
spine.
was terrifying. I didn't
was-
like. I mean, you went over a spine, and you also sort of. I'm not saying you had to duck your head down, but you kind of.
didn't. You were fine. You were clear, but yeah, it was
But it
definitely.
still felt like you were going. You were basically built a ramp through probably a door, for like a good 16-foot high kind of vehicle size kind of doorway.
Yep.
But still, pretty
There's that in
radical kind of moves, building
So
ramps through.
That was good. And then, but yeah, it was the top floor, which is big, sort of taller area, and that had, I mean, again, a lot of stuff's just started out with just a few scrappy bits of wood, but then over time, we got somewhere. I'm pretty sure. I think Blair McCafferty's dad might have given us some money to buy wood or something like that. I've got some. I might be remembering that wrong.
There was
We
some
definitely got
phenomenal.
plywood.
You want to see some photos of that? I mean, that's amazing. The mini ramp. I feel like the mini ramp there was a fun box with a hip and a bank to curb, but the street setup. So that you're also moving into the early 90s. This fun box I'm talking about.
It was like a 90-degree, but joined. So it was like a hip, but it was like
really
trying to put a joint in the middle. You know what I mean? So it's like 90 because there's no gap. So it's like but it's
So
like
really great
but a super mellow transition. So it was
So
like
a good landing.
for like
you could
yeah,
land
you could,
all sorts of. So it's when things got
over
really
it and-
tech and the wheels got really small.
Yeah, it was that time of early 90s, small, big pants,
Baggy
small
trousers.
wheels sort of thing.
But you could do all manners of flip variations over this hip and get away with it. There's also a driveway, a couple of wall ride ramps.
Well, off the back of that, because that was the hip there, but if you went straight ahead, it went over and there was a flat bank with a 1 foot
Kicker.
you know,
So
30
this,
centimetre haul.
I'm going to
like,
do this.
double like square rail down it, and then there was a little grind ledge.
This back wall. See, my best friend.
There you go.
Okay, so that is a monumental wall ride. We're going to cut to a picture of this in
Yeah.
black and white so you can see it. But on the back wall, there's a huge 45-degree bank with a kicker out of it, which was quite a thing. They had one of them.
Yeah, it was basically, well, it was like it transitioned, kind of went straight, then went transitioned up
It's
the wall.
crazy.
I mean, literally, that picture there, what's crazy about that is that there
It's
was
about-
most of the people that rode that thing were BMXers, and Craig would start
Roll
from
for
the
the wall.
back. And Craig also pushed Mongo, didn't he? Craig,
You'll see the picture.
Craig was a Mongo
You need
pusher,
to see it.
wasn't he? He pushed Mongo.
Yeah, no, from the back
so
of the
Craig
hall.
would be pushing, Mongo with the foot at the back, and he'd just be absolutely cranking
And he
it.
would
going
do
so-
it all in one big manual
and then he would just do
kick
this
turn.
massive kick turn over there. And he
It's
was one of the few people, like, it wasn't like the plywood
It's
was
so
super
big.
rough.
That picture doesn't.
it doesn't do it justice
If you
at
look
all.
at the top, look at the photo, guys.
Yeah.
There's holes in the roof,
Yeah,
so this
yeah.
gets rained on. The plywood is sort of
And it's
soggy.
soggy.
It's cardboard.
Bumpy and
The kick is amazing. One of my favorite. You could pop as big an ollie as you like.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
a good right landing.
Yeah.
But to get onto the brick wall, you're talking. It's like 12, 14 feet high.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a 6 foot gap. It's not that big, but it's monumental.
yeah.
I mean, and the speed you need to even. Most people get halfway up that bank because it's soggy and
Oh,
it's rough and
yeah,
it's. I mean, it's genius, but it's not easy. Craig could hit the whole thing, do the wall ride, and come back down
Whoa.
like a one big
Yeah, yeah.
14, 16-foot arc.
Yeah.
It's tremendous, and that's what this T-shirt
what that
is.
t-shirt's
So
for.
I mean, I'm getting a little bit shiver, but this is a tribute T-shirt.
Well,
that-
there's a skateboard deck that we made.
Oh, yeah,
as
you guys
It's
did that
there's
first.
A deck which got stuff in there. I could get an image of that
So,
up as well.
yeah, well, get the board and the T-shirt on there. But this was the guy who kind of, I mean, you guys, it took a lot of people to build these, build and maintain it. But he was
Yep.
this sort of,
I mean, Craig's the guy. I mean, again, Craig kind of like guys had gone into the first place to make it work, but Craig kind of motivated people to do stuff. Same thing happened, I think. Probably Colin Payne and Craig probably both went out looking for a space, but again, they were just determined to find
Yeah,
somewhere. So
yeah.
that was what Craig was really
You
good
need
at. just-
people like that in a
Yeah.
project like that.
Yeah, yeah.
The kind of heart and soul
So-
behind it.
Because they found out. I mean, Colin went into that space because that basically was like a car garage and it had been empty. I think about 20 years at that point. It had been an empty building, and there was shelves that had big, big chipboard shelves on it, which had just disintegrated over time. But the building was full of pigeons, and basically the pigeons had just crapped everywhere. And there was this mixture of degraded wood and pigeon poo, and Colin just swept all of this stuff out.
Was it not? There was
Cleaned
an
it all
art
out.
installation there. There's
That's right. There was like string tied
everywhere.
to all the frames and stuff like that. So Colin tidied all of this
Colin
stuff
Payton
up.
is another guy, a Dundee original, who's no longer who died a number of years ago. But I mean, yeah, him and Craig, in terms of like just making shit happen, they went in there, like Greg said, cleared that space, inhabited a space that was basically a derelict building, swept it up. And then you have this situation again where like Craig's probably talking to the police saying, it's okay, we're tidying it up, and it's no longer a place where homeless people stay because
what
it's-
happened with that place is actually the building. The first one was probably a building I think was owned by the council, but the second one in the DCA building was actually privately owned,
Right.
and it was actually by a guy called, I think if I remember right, it's a guy called Bill Sword. I think he might even be like a local judge, and then he came down one time because he'd heard people were skating in there.
Okay.
He came down thinking like, okay, I'm going to see what's going on and kick people out. But when he came in, he realised that we'd tidied the building up completely and built stuff. And far from trashing it, we'd cleaned all the
You're
stuff
a good
up.
resident.
And he actually became
Patron.
he became one of our strongest allies. He was totally like, no, that's fine.
Yeah,
you guys
that's
can be
cool
there.
though.
And when eventually we did get kicked out of the building, he and his son tried their hardest to try and find a place to put the ramps in so that it didn't get destroyed and things like
Big
that.
shout
it was-
out to him.
So yeah, it's amazing, but it just showed that
Especially
we
at a
weren't wrecking
time when
things.
the general public still don't have the best attitude
Well,
towards
I guess
skateboarding.
it's just skateboarding. You might think these guys, what are they doing in the space?
Yeah.
But when you come and see, it's like they're actually maintaining it. They're looking
Yeah.
after the building. They're
Yeah.
kind of good, like patrons. They tidy up. They're good,
Yeah.
good house guests. There's a funny because seeing getting in there. There's a photo that came to mind. I think it's Mark Foster, but there used to be a tube, a ventilation tube. And you climb into the tube. There's a pile of rubbish, and I've got a photo in mind that's in that
Wow, that's
album.
cool.
So people crawl in, or you go through a broken window, or whatever, and then it kind of.
Eventually we got it. We had doorway in, and you could go in it through a
Well, that's why
normal way.
you
as
kind
well.
of renovated the building, so it's open
Did
for
a,
business.
did a lot of the crew from the first factory transfer into the second factory? I mean, I take it usual that age with people.
Yeah.
A lot of people would have went their separate ways, went off, moved out of town, whatever.
Yeah.
But was there still a core group of you guys that went into the second one?
I think so. I think it was still
the same
yeah.
names are coming up. It's
I
you
think so.
guys,
Yeah.
Colin, and
Yeah, I
you
think,
know,
I think a bunch of it all
Craig,
still skate there.
Smod.
Yeah, Colin,
So-
Craig, and Smod, and all these guys were.
and then the
still skating.
Newport guys there came, and I'd actually meet John Anderson from Livy. That's what I mean by I feel like in the 90s when there was even less, the vert ramps had all shut, exhibition centre had gone, Angel Lights had gone. Toby Patterson was talking about how he used to like drive up to Dundee, and we might come through from Aberdeen, so we'd meet, they'd skate, then they'd drive to Bristol, have a street session, and then hit Livy on the way home. But I feel like, and John Anderson used to come up from Livy, because even though Livy's like amazing and it's concrete, this was like a different kind of landscape. It's kind of a street park with driveways, and he also studied in Stirling. So it was one of the motivations for me going to Dundee, and we were friends already, but there's a whole scene around that factory, It was like, and people would travel, so it's like kind of.
And Kenny Omond from Livy would get a minibus and bring loads of the Livy
I mean,
skaters
look at
through
that.
as well,
That's
and
like-
do that. So there is. I don't know if I've got it, but I know Kenny's got a bunch of
Skate
footage
tourism
from
Dundee,
the
Dundee.
But yeah, no, just because it was there was nothing. Probably, yeah. I mean, there really wasn't any other indoor.
I don't
for-
feel like there's
for a little
anywhere
while,
else
especially
to
the
go.
first one. I mean, obviously Angel Lights opened up, and that was there for a few years.
But once that is shut in
but-
say 91 till about the middle of 94, 95, because I wrote my dissertation about skateboarding, and I actually had to repeat the year because I spent so much time skateboarding. I was just like, I'm going to do some more research today and go hang out in the factory. But this is like, so that's about a 4-year run, 91 to 95. I'm not sure when it
Something
came
like that.
down.
So
Yeah, I can't remember.
what happened at the end? Why did factory two
Two
end?
closed basically because at that time the building got acquired to basically be turned into the Dundee Contemporary Arts Centre.
So that
So
okay.
that's
Andy
basically
Dobson?
what it
No,
came to.
is
Yeah,
it?
yeah, it's Andy,
Andy
Dobson.
Dobson.
And
Yeah.
what year is this? So we say goodbye to number 2.
97, 95. I just said 95.
That lasted quite long, then.
Nice.
I know, because it goes. It's not there when I'm in. So I'm basing this on art school
Yeah.
experience, but that's kind of. It was there up until 95, 96.
I think 95, 96, I think. Off the top of my
DCA
head, I think.
opens in 99. So if you imagine a capital building project, they're going to need
Yeah,
at least
yeah.
2 or 3 years. 96.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
I
say
think so.
95,
I
96.
think 96. I think that's about right.
And then
Yep.
we're left
And
without
then-
anything again.
Basically, yes.
Wow,
I mean,
then-
the bit that fills in the gap from because you've got was the factories, but then the spot that comes in also we've got over. We've talked about Newport, which is basically just across the river from Dundee, and right now there is a really good concrete skate park in Newport, but
In the same
but
field
exactly
where the wooden
same-
ball was
yeah,
built.
right where
Years
the skate
ago,
park
so-
is now. Up the hill a little bit, we basically had this great kind of rectangular wooden bowl that was about sort of 5 foot sort of deep bowl that a bunch again Craig and a whole bunch of us sort of helped build that there, and that was there for a lot of that
So
time
that's
as
why
well.
I've just shouted out. Sorry, I keep shouting out when I see people
Yeah.
on the screen. But Andy Dobson lived with Craig. That's when I was going. When did he? And they built.
Yeah.
I feel like they built the sessions there on that ramp. We were there, obviously.
Yeah,
But he, just to put that in context, Andy's from the northeast, but he moved to Vancouver along with John Rattery, and they all went separately, and Alex Craig, and there's a whole Scottish contingent in Vancouver. But Andy was pressing boards called Folk, so sourcing plywood pressing. So he had really nice. He did one with Clan actually. Jeff Grahowski. I think
Tom Grolski.
Tom, yeah, get it right. Just
Nearly,
Jeff Grosso,
nearly.
Tom Grolski. But anyway, but there's just a nice overlap, and that was like footage of Andy skating there, and that must have been like 90. Just judging on the kind of trousers and the tricks. There's some street stuff going down there, but they're moving back to the Perth Road spot, which is because Jamie was like, then the 90s happened. It was like the death of Perth,
the dark ages.
but it was dark. But the factory was it's a model. It's the closest I've ever seen to functioning of social anarchy, where you actually have a group that have taken over a space.
I mean, it's crazy they got away with it. Like, it just sounds like it would be hard to see something like that happening now.
It's also, it's sort of like the end of, it's like the post-industrial landscape, and it's like people moving in, and
I think it's that kind of thing where it's like down to guys like Colin and Smod and all the guys that first moved into that building. I think it's just the sheer balls of just going in and just starting doing something. It's like putting on a high-vis vest and doing something. People just presume that you're
so you're building
official. It seems like maybe people don't question it because they just think, I don't no idea, but surprisingly didn't get much resistance.
Okay, so it's like Charlie and the Archers, up at the DIY. The difference between the DIYs then and now is that we were building in wood, and nowadays it's in concrete. And concrete makes a lot of sense because it's going to be longevity,
for sure,
it's a little more durable. But it's kind of that whole realizing self-motivation, the kind of DIY we were going to bring along, but we didn't. We maybe flashed them, but some of these collages that this male, where he used to send stuff through the post, it's sort of the punk zine thing, and ordering stuff by post. We were talking about ordering boards or clothes, and so Rex sending all this kind of crazy collage art to me and Andy Dobson, who I was talking about, and there's this kind of, why am I talking about? Oh, the DIY aspect of skateboarding. Self, kind of like, if there's not the landscape that you require, you build it yourself. Yeah. And that's what this is.
Well, that was kind of the thing. I mean, at the times, off the back of, like I said, talked about the Broughty Ferry ramps that originally had, and even with this guy, Scott Carroll, who was a literally world champion BMXer, got nowhere with the council to tried to see about getting like an official skate park of some kind of build or some kind of ramp, and there was just no interest. So we realized early on that like the council were not going to do anything for us, and obviously at that time, skateboarding and in general public opinion is not obviously not like it is now.
Weirdly, for a bunch of dysfunctional sort of dropouts, quite well motivated, kind of like drawing on skill sets and
but I think
articulate.
But even like culturally in towns at this kind of era, and even like Dundee and many other cities, I mean, like things like, football hooliganism, soccer casuals and stuff was quite a big thing. So going into town centres in many places, like especially looking like a skater, you were definitely a target. So the culture from the wider sort of people in cities were not like pro skateboarding. So we knew that things were not going to happen. Nobody's going to build stuff. So that's really the kind of motivation. Thought, well, we've just got to do this ourselves. I mean, the Broughty Ferry ramps were self-made, as basically Nick and
up in Aberdeen, we were building ramps in the industrial estate in Bridge of Dawn and in Torrey. The same thing in the back of these industrial kind of yards. Some people just turn a blind eye and you build out pallets. Never very good. Not like didn't last long, but there was just a series of ramps always popping up. So kind of like that building the landscape. I went onto the sort of creative output, the collages, but there's this sort of finding uses for spaces, staircases, handrails, banks. That's a kind of creative way of looking at the landscape. Using empty swimming pools and that developing the kind of the architecture of skateboarding and BMXing now, quarter pipes and driveways are literally named driveways, are driveway gaps. There's all that stuff is somehow an appropriation of the built environment, and then the extension of that is like if you're getting busted or kicked off stairs or whatever, and the same thing of like Rick's right about this sort of casual, skateboarders look different. still kind of do, but it's way more
It's like
widespread now.
You'd go to Livy sometimes if you had to get.
Livy was a gauntlet.
Like if you were running the gauntlet going to Livy, especially if you got the bus to Livy, you had to get the bus. Sometimes the trains weren't running, going from Livingston bus station to Livy. There'd just be people hanging out throwing coins at you and stuff like that.
Same thing.
So you definitely look at, like, obviously skateboarding's fully embraced by people these days. It was not like that then.
I mean, it's still kind of got its, you know, a slight kind of like subculture or outsider status. That's what's kind of cool about it. But you've got the legitimacy of like the Olympic Games, but you at ground level you still require kind of the people who are going street skateboarding or building a spot, like the Kingston DIY or the Archers. You know, we've been trying to get the park built under the M74, and the timescale we've done that, some upstarts half our age have just rolled in some cement mixers and started building themselves. Before you know it, the city's going to adopt that and go, this is our new cultural kind of leisure space, because it's just people kind of fulfilling and, you know, addressing the gaps. And if you're coming out of like this era, post Thatcher, you know, the landscape's pretty bleak. It's also the sort of I'm not joking. It's bad. But the landscape's bleak. All the industry's kind of dying. It's been privatized. Same time, not coincidentally, as, you know, the acid house or the sort of rave culture, which occupies warehouses or empty fields, is this kind of like, actually, if I'm going to swear, if things are fucked, we're going to build our own. We're going to sort of build a new model.
Nicely put.
And that's what is actually, and this all came to me later. You don't realize you're participating.
Yeah,
you're
not at the time.
But you're addressing a gap. There's a gap here, and you guys are filling the void with this a very positive. So I'm just going to big Rick up now, because then Rick takes this. Sorry, you were going to ask a question, but he takes this principle and then kind of formalizes it another stage, or legitimatizes it. I can't have a problem with that word, but makes it kind of recognizable with the Gate Church, and builds the Factory 3, which you probably ask about, which is actually a pay-in facility, but it's dry. It's got electricity. So you suddenly start to build on this experience, and this gets us to where we are now, which is like the loading bay, places with cafes, you know, showers and like facilities, rather than climbing through a window into a derelict factory. Which is
what about Factory 3?
Yeah, I mean, the only one thing I would just slot in the midst of that as well, because you've got between Factory 2 and Factory 3, the other thing that it's not classed as Factory, but another key Dundee skate place is the hockey.
Well, me and Ben went up there,
which is basically
another derelict space.
It had a kind of covered space, but it was mostly an outdoor, like a.
So they ripped the roof. They ripped the roof off. Another big. Dundee's got all this jute industry, this old industry which has died. So there's all these empty factory spaces. And this one, there's no roof on it, but there's a huge stretch of concrete.
Loads of concrete inside, driveway bits and ledges and stuff like that. So.
And we were up there one time, just sort of kicking about and thinking, this could be should build a skate spot here, but didn't really do it. And then someone else had the same idea, and then so that's funny, because that was the gap, wasn't it? After
that's what I said. I don't
outdoor street spot.
Even though it's not a factory as such, but it's like from the process of getting there. That filled in that era between when Factory 2 shut and then
that pole jam. You know the photograph that I sent you of, actually you sent it to me.
That's right,
and I'm on a cut down board. That's the Hawk Hill.
Yeah.
So there wasn't a cover there, but Dundee's pretty sunny, and it's a beaut. You know, you just got concrete, expanse of concrete. There's loads of walls that the graffiti writers are painting on, and there's just a kind of it's called the Hawk Hill. But it's kind of like not the Factory 3, but it's this new spot.
It wasn't Factory, but it was a new spot, and just great, like loads just.
And there was
totally exposed to when it's sunny weather is absolutely brilliant. So people just be having barbecues and just
quite high up on the hill.
I think had been people making stuff out of concrete, it would have been absolutely perfect for like
concrete. You could have built up. It would have been. It's the beginning of that, and you had these loading bay ledges because it's all factory infrastructure. So it was just like propped up wooden ramps.
There was like a little mini ramp at one point.
Wall rides
and stuff like that.
I had a great. I mean, that was me. That was my kind of couple of years off. You know, I graduated. I was hanging out skateboarding. And it was It's cool,
Yeah.
cool scene.
Yeah.
But alongside that, so that's kind of still happening in one of these found spaces. Rick's then responsible for
Yeah, well,
building
basically,
an indoor park.
the factory
And just
3
for
technically.
my-
Yep.
Picture in my head.
Yep.
This park we're talking about, number 3.
Yep.
This is the one that closed quite recently. Not
Technically,
very,
that'd be the
very
4th
recently,
one.
but
It's basically the same thing, but it eventually moved to a new location, a much, much bigger
Okay, so
park.
still,
so
like,
it's still,
okay, I'm
so I
there.
still very
I'm
much the third
visualising
one.
this one now, okay.
So this one was still quite central. It's actually really close to where Dundee skate park is. It's not far. Called Blinchell Street is what we refer to that one as. But that basically came about, and just a local church in Dundee that just wanted to basically do something for the skaters.
Yeah.
So this would be about
Probably
that opened in May 98.
probably on your initiative.
Yeah, I think.
You're
Well,
being
basically,
quite humble
I mean,
here.
it's basically just one of the guy Gordon Stewart who's the leader of the church. I knew him, and he was just skateboarded and knew the situation of how things had been with skateboarding, and
In
were
98?
just keen to. So it opened in May '98, and so it probably
Cool.
spent spent a few months open. So probably started. I think at some point we had a meeting in a McDonald's in Dundee at one point just to get skaters together and just say like,
yeah.
I'd like to do something, and basically opened that it's about 6,000 square feet. I don't know what that is in meters, but it's kind of
It's
weird.
quite big stuff though.
Good.
Big quarter pipes,
Yeah,
big fun box in the middle, which we were talking with John Rattray. Huge, actually. Intimidating to get over. Stu Graham, John Rattray, fine. Big quarter pipe, big fun box.
Yeah.
If you're a mere mortal, quite a big gap. John Rattray ollied the whole thing to tail slide down a very steep handrailing on the side, and it was just phenomenal stunt riding. And also, even the bail, he managed to, because you were like 4 or 5 feet high, pinging it to get over this box anyway. He's aiming for this, double bar handrail, but thin, and bailed, kicked his board away, and ran down the handrail. It's like that kind of this next level awareness where I'm in space, I'm flying, hurtling towards a handrail. I don't think I'm going to make it, so I'm just going to get rid of the board and run down the handrail. I'm unreal.
The funny connection actually with the third factory and this one is that in some of the footage on there's the little 12-foot wide small mini ramp that's separate skating in there. That little mini ramp it was Nick Johnson that made that. That actually went to Factory 2, and that actually went to Blinchell Street.
Where was it?
And it actually ended up in the 4th one as well. That actually...
that's how well it's built. Nick Johnson.
I love stuff like that. That's
so that lasted
cool.
all that time. I have no idea where it went to now when the final one closed.
Concrete, just going concrete wall. There's an instance of concrete in the first factory.
Yeah. But so May 98, that place opened, and that basically when it opened, like I say, it was 6,000 square feet. I think at the time that's got to be the only indoor park again when that opened
In Scotland. Yeah, I can't
think
think
so.
of it. Oh, there might have been. Was the one in Dice in Aberdeen? Not that's a little bit
the
later.
Stonywood one, but that was only
was
open
later.
summer times because it was in a curling rink, so it was used for curling in the winter
I
time.
still feel like it's a year or two.
I think it's
to
still a bit
come.
later. Yeah, I don't think it's there.
early 2000s.
But I know again because Edinburgh, there'd be certain nights, there'd be certain sessions. So I know that a lot of the Edinburgh guys would come through, and so people would come and skate. But I mean, there was such a huge demand for people riding. As soon as that place opened, it was clear that you could have a much bigger park if you wanted. So
And it was different this time because
it was
official.
run. It was official, so it was run at opening times. You paid to get in.
Yeah.
you had to
a
wear
lease,
helmets. Because insurance rules and stuff like that. So you
had to wear a helmet.
So yeah, that was a tricky challenge just because
culturally it's a shift because I'm going to say legitimate again.
Yeah.
This is a legitimate skate
Third
park.
time lucky you got it.
Wow, yeah. There's a church involved behind it. The kind of supporting
So I mean, they put the money in and do it, and just so basically, I mean, it was still run by volunteers. There was like skaters and people from the church.
You
that
probably found the
volunteer
space.
and
Dude. How
stuff.
did you find the space? Skateboarders.
We had it around for a few places, I think, and then just turned out, just as a good because it's quite central, so it was easy enough for people to walk to and go to, and then
It was a healthy mini ramp too. It was big.
Oh,
Rocker came
the
up
mini ramp
from Kirkton.
Well, that mini ramp was actually originally built. Again, the guys that built the Angel Lights Park in Glasgow would build ramps for other places. So Perth had a 16-foot wide mini ramp outdoors. Dundee had one, so that was actually in 2 places outside. Then it ended up in Curran Community Centre for a while.
That was the cut down ramp. And you cut it down for the...
No, it wasn't cut down. That was in storage for a while after that place shut. So that was a 16-foot wide ramp. They gave us that to use, but we added another 8 feet on and put another couple of feet of flat bottom on it because it was a little bit tight. And then that 24 feet wide, 6 foot high mini ramp is...
That was big.
Incredible. It's just the best ramp ever. I've got there's a nice photo of me doing an invert on that one, which is on my Facebook profile. I've not changed it for years because it's one of my favourite photos. One of the few times I've done an invert.
And then that factory runs until...
That runs until around about 2003. Then it didn't shut at all. It basically moved. Because basically from early on when that factory opened, factory 3 opened, realised okay, we could have a much bigger place. So quite soon on we started looking into the idea of sort of trying to fundraise to see whether we could get something bigger. And as that kind of started getting looked at, decided that if they were going to do it, it needed to be a really, really big project. So I mean that factory cost, if I recall correctly, I think it cost about £43,000 to build Factory 3, everything in there, everything included, even like the rent wasn't a lot and insurance was really small. There was all the running costs for stuff was way, way cheaper than it is now.
Again, but post-apocalyptic, sorry, not apocalyptic, but this post-industrial
I think just had a good deal.
The
people who rented the building from, again, it was a shell. I mean, we literally went in there, we had to build the toilets, we had to literally dig the floor up, drill a giant hole through what must have been about a 2 to 3 foot thick wall in order to run all the pipe work through for it. We had to do everything in there. So that was part of the deal. I think that the people who owned the building eventually, when we moved out, they had a fully serviced toilets and office and everything.
This is the practicalities of an actual a space.
Yeah.
There's a business model there too, because it's got to pay. You've got to pay the rent.
It wasn't intended to be a profit-making thing.
I don't mean that. I just mean that it's different from the taking over abandoned space. It's the beginning of people. There weren't any other parks. People travelled to skate it, and then. But it's just sort of keep making this link to today. The shift in the landscape where you have paying facilities. You have people qualifying for the Olympic Games at the loading bay,
And just to bring us up to speed, just conscious of time, unfortunately. Passion Park.
Passion Park, yes.
Happening in Dundee, so...
That's happening. I'm not sure when it's on, but pretty soon. They're getting there, I think they've had pretty much a lot of their final... permissions and stuff coming through.
It's been really interesting just following it on Instagram, and best of luck to you guys at Passion Park. I'm sure those guys have worked really, really hard and persevered because it's taken them a long time to basically the building
So you're not involved. You're not involved in it.
No. I've been inside and checked it out and stuff. But it's cool. It's a good little location, and it's right in the centre of Dundee as well. But it's actually the third location they looked at. So they've looked at one place, didn't get planning permission, went to another place, I think they did get planning permission, but then got knocked back. And then now they've got this third place, but it's great because it's literally you get a train or a bus to Dundee. It's literally, if you know where Aussie's skate shop in Dundee is, literally like
what sort of size are we
15-second walk from Aussie's.
I don't know.
I don't know what the square footage will be. It's not huge, but I think obviously I think it's wise to not go crazy, but it's good. It's got a really nice street spot. There's a little 12-foot wide mini ramp, a little bit like the one that's on there, a little mini like that, and then there's a whole kind of sort of street area and quarters, and there's a really nice.
So it's getting built. It's almost finished.
Yeah,
almost. I mean, they're selling memberships. It's like almost ready to go.
Yeah. No, I think
we'll put a link into the description. But
there's Lewis, Allen, and Scott Young that are doing it. They're both just doing it off their own back and making it work. So
I've spoke briefly with the guys and invited them on, so once they're up and running it'll be a cool conversation. A new generation, it must be strange to see, like
it's cool.
30 years later.
Yeah.
And they're still
Long time.
thriving.
I mean,
Dundee
I guess the
skate
week, because
scene.
there's been a wee gap. I mean, jumping in very quickly for the sort of Factory 4 stuff, just to fill in a wee gap. There's, let's say, 2003-ish. They basically moved up to this much bigger building, but that whole project was like a 1.4 million project with a huge, even bigger, more official thing. Like it literally had toilets, had like an IT suite, had all this other stuff that was sort of there to be sort of help other like spaces they would rent out to make other money.
Did it have
Built
showers?
a much bigger part. Yeah, it had. I
Yeah,
think there were showers
It was
there
the
used.
first park. It was like clean. It was a clean
Yeah,
park.
yeah.
Like even the other one, the Factory
Yeah.
3, still felt quite kind of.
It was
like
still. I mean, it was a
space.
it was a ghetto space, and the place was so dusty you'd have
Whereas
massive,
that one
massive
was
dust
like-
boogers. But
yeah.
that was shiny and clean and
So
like.
it might have had carpeted rooms.
Well, it was built from scratch. Like the whole building was built from scratch. Like
Yeah.
massive.
Which is
building.
why I'm kind of using it as a link to
Yeah,
like
yeah.
what might happen, might be happening
yeah.
today in terms
Yeah.
of.
Yeah. And then that ran. I mean, that place opened maybe 2003, 2004, and that closed in about 2019. That it stopped. The place itself is still running.
Yeah,
but
that was the one I knew had closed kind of recently.
It's basically, I think 2019 they got rid of the skate ramps from there, and it just turned into like it's basically just a massive giant soft play place now is what it is. I think really, but probably why they. I think they survived a lot on scooter kids by the end of it. To be honest,
sign of the
A lot
times.
and then scooter kids were kind of dropping off. So I think they just wisely decided to
Bring the
close
boards
in
back.
some ways and stuff like that. So, but I think I mean it was definitely a big change in the kind of ethos and how all that kind of stuff worked, being a much bigger place. And probably I think the fourth one struggled the most, probably as far as the kind of culture of the core kind of scene. Certainly with a lot of older skaters didn't really skate there as much and stuff like that as well. But a whole other younger generation, I think guys like Josh Brown from Dundee, he grew up skating there through the factory and stuff like
Amazing
that. So I mean,
skater.
loads of skaters came out of there too, so they're all it's all a good thing in the end,
I think it's a perfect time, just as this footage is coming to an end, for our song of the day from each of you. So you're both picking a song
Cool.
that, if you want, relates to skateboarding, reminds you of skateboarding. You see in the skate edit.
Yeah.
What about when you look back
I
at
know your
this
song.
time?
I've got an obvious one.
Peekaboo.
But I'm not gonna. I've got
When-
something else.
When
in
you
mind.
look back at this time and this era, what's
Yeah.
a song that comes to mind that what's got good memories with it, just to finish
Yeah.
up?
I mean, I had another song in mind, but it felt a bit obvious. But in the video that we made at this time was what's called the DHSS video, which you could put a link to or something.
Yeah, we can link it.
In that video, in my part in the video, it's a song called Peekaboo by Devo. That was
Okay.
my song in that section, which is.
Devo's come back.
But Devo, it was when Jamie picked Devo last time. I was like, I can't.
Yeah, but you were
I was like,
you were talking about it earlier.
I know. I
Devo.
I saw
Rick's
Devo
done
play
it.
a few months ago, and they played Peekaboo as their second song, and I was just, it was pretty epic. So it's cool.
I mean, I'm going fire hose again, but I've got to go somewhere else. I can't. I've gone blank. I've got completely blank. Skateboarding.
I'm going for a second song to be cheeky
Yeah,
because
do it.
the song
I
I had
said
in mind-
No, go for it,
Peekaboo.
just
I'll take it.
the song I like is a song called, I think it's called Pleasant Street by Tim Buckley. It's actually was on Ryan Sheckler's part in the Lifers video that came out
I know
recently.
what I'm gonna do
and
then.
it's just a absolutely brilliant song.
It's
So,
a good it's sort of I think this takes us from here because this is John Rowley, Killing Yourself to Live, Black Sabbath.
Okay.
That was fairly definitive when I saw that, only because I was talking about this with Toby recently, the whole baggy hip hop thing in the 90s, and somehow coming out with a sort of heavy metal track was really at the time just cut through, and I was like, yes, that's Killing Yourself to Live. An amazing section, but where it gets us now is like the idea of, like, it was a kind of like baggy hip hop association,
Yep.
not Bristol, Embarcadero Square. I mean, skateboarding is lots of things. There's not one particular music choice. Diva's amazing. I'd go with Diva every day of the
Diva.
week. But to get a little bit heavy metal in there, some shred.
nice.
Well, it's been great, Ray, having you back on. Rick, meeting you for
Cool.
the first time and hearing
No
this
worries.
amazing story. I'll link both you guys in the bio, and please do come
we
back
just-
again later
We've
on.
just done an hour again. Is that it?
Yeah, just over an hour.
Nice.
Black
Done.
Sabbath.
Cool.
Blackout.
Rick Curran.
And thank you once again to Liquid Death, as always, to keeping us hydrated.
Cheers.
Much appreciated. And yeah, see you guys next week.
Bye.
I just realised what I've just done there. I've gone like Black Sabbath with a Christian skateboarder.
I just that's sign language for I love you.
Is it?
American Sign Language.
Oh well, that's what I did.
There you go.
Yeah, there you
That's-
go.
Yeah, it just goes by
There
too
you go.
fast.
I'm not a nice